The Morning Brew with Elle Dawson and Gillian Robertson. Brought to you by Fight Bananas.
Good morning, guys. It's the Sunday Morning Brew. We are here with a brand new gorgeous background that Dave made us that matches Gillian's hair. To my left, right, depending on your screen, is the savage Gillian Robertson. I'm Elle Dawson, and we are here to break down some fights. What's up? How are you, G?
I'm doing good. There's a decent amount of good fights a lot of exciting fights last night.
No, I agree. I honestly thought that this card would kind of overshadow the pay-per-view. And I was very wrong. The pay-per-view actually killed it. But I did really enjoy this main card. The prelims weren't like anything necessarily to write home about, with one or two decent fights on the prelims, but the main card was killer.
Oh yeah, the main event especially. I'm like kind of just a back and forth firefight with two dudes that are just absolute tanks of human beings.
Dude, how awesome is freaking Jared Cannonier? The dude has knockouts in 3 different weight classes. He's 40 years old, and he's putting away guys as dangerous as Gregory Rodrigues. Like,
honestly, I didn't realize he was 40 until like after the fight, one of the commentators said something about it. And I was like, oh my God, like a performance like that at 40 years old, super impressive. And like, he's against someone like Gregory Rodrigues too. I'm like, he was coming at him in the first round, coming for the finish. Cannonier weathered the storm early and then just was able to put it on him after that.
Yeah, no, and honestly, great fights all the way down the card. Yeah, obviously, absolute banger in the main event. I think we all expected that from a striker like Jared and just a freaking tank like Rodrigues. How massive is that guy? He's so big.
And like both of them just look like they're just built like solid. Like they probably like there's just some guys at the gym that I know. I'm like, even when they're tap sparring, they're just cracking you because they're just built like that. They're just built like solid, and they look like those type of guys that like every punch is hurting.
Yeah, and I think a guy like Jared, who came into the UFC at heavyweight, has wins, has knockouts at heavyweight, has wins, has knockouts at 205, and now has, finishes as well at 185. Like, he's got to have some freaking heavyweight hips on him, right? Like, shooting on that guy and just feeling the denseness in those hands, like, has to be insane.
Yeah, I'm like you said, absolute tanks of human beings.
I got to admit, I was a little bit disappointed in Sajikov versus Bonfim because that was one of the fights I was the most excited for. And I feel like no matter where you train, no matter what your first language is, you have to know that if you tell a referee that you can't see, that the fight is over. Mm-hmm. And you to react the way that Bonfim did after, like, you have to know that that was going to be the result from saying that you can't see. And like, it was a very strange moment. I was really looking forward to seeing, more of that fight because both those guys were there to fight as well.
And Bonfim had a great first round. Sadikov took it back a little bit at the end, was able to drop him. But the beginning, like, Bonfim was on top of him. Both of them, I feel like, it's like, I guess we just kind of said this about Cannonier, but they're just dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, they're just dangerous guys. Like, everything they're throwing is with intent, with power. And, yeah, like you said, it was a letdown to see it finish like that. To see, I don't know, like, I guess I don't know really. I don't know. You got to know it as a fighter. Like you said, you got to know, not like you got to lie about that shit.
And you can't be surprised that the fight got stopped, which made me kind of wonder if he was looking for that way out, Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a tough first round, but like you said, it wasn't one-sided. It was a close first round. It was absolutely a fight that Bonfim could have come back and won.
Oh, yeah. And his brother earlier in the night with an amazing performance. Ended up getting performance of the night as well.
Yeah. I mean, they've both done well coming in, like I think I always get them confused because they're only like one weight class apart. The smaller brother, I think like he got finished in like his second or third maybe UFC fight, but that was against Benoit Saint-Denis, like a super tough opponent. So I do think that he's got a really high ceiling. So I'd like to see him bounce back from this because I know Sajikov is a savage. I don't know. Do you remember his fight with Slava Claus?
I do not, but I'm a huge Slava Claus fan.
Always fun. Go back and watch that fight because that was a killer fight. That was my fight of the year. I think that was 23, maybe. It's been a minute, but that was one of my fights of the year that year. So I am always down for a Sajikov fight, but I would like to see Von Fiem bounce back because I wasn't impressed to see him go out that way, and I'd like to see him come back. Edmund Shabazian honestly did exactly what I expected him to against Dylan Budka. I just think the experience. We were talking about this with Francisco Prado a couple weeks ago. Like so young in the game against a guy like Jake Matthews who has tons of experience. I think Budka has only been in the UFC for a couple of fights, so I expect to see that from him as well. But I was good all around, honestly. Vieira and Petrosky was a great fight. Obviously, huge congratulations to Yusuf Zalal. He's been on a tear since he got back into the UFC. I don't think we see that all too often where guys, come in and just don't do that great in their first outing. And then they get cut and come back. I mean, we saw it happen with Rong Zhu. He's been doing well. His second stint in the UFC, obviously Zalal has been crushing it. Is it four in a row now?
Yeah, it just seemed like Kattar couldn't find him. It was like he was using the great footwork on the outside, constantly moving, constantly creating the angles, then just getting in when he needed to, getting out. And it seemed like Kattar was just kind of following him. He wasn't necessarily using footwork to cut off the cage. And it's like he was just trying to box him. And it was like he was walking after him the whole time until the third round. It looked like he kind of committed a little bit more, tried to push the pace a little bit more. And I'm also wondering if it's like he is so used to like 5-minute rounds, if he is like slowing down the pace, because it looked like he had a lot more gas left in the third round than he did in the first two.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, I guess he hasn't fought that many main events, right? That he should be treating everything like a 5-rounder. I just wonder how people train too, because I think this is a huge problem with Strickland, where I'm like, I think he does like 30 rounds in the gym. And I'm like, now you learn to pace yourself for 30 rounds. I'm like, if you're doing 3 5-minute rounds, you need to learn how to make it a sprint. You need to sprint for those 3 5 minutes instead of learning to like make it a marathon of 5 minutes of like 20 rounds. Yeah, no, 100%. And honestly, let's touch on Sean Strickland here, because did you see Eric Nixick's comments, which I normally would be kind of about a coach speaking out about a fighter that they train like that. But I have heard that Strickland is a very difficult fighter to coach. I don't think he really allows Nixick too much authority as his coach. It's pretty much like Sean Strickland running his own camp. Like, do you think he stays with Nixick? Do you think we see Sean Strickland move to another camp? Do you think we ever see him, in that number one contendership position again?
Oh, I don't know if you saw, Sean actually released a video talking about it as well.
Oh, I didn't see it. No.
Yeah. So Sean said that he's like, I like Eric. He's a good guy. We'll still be friends. Will he corner me again? No, probably not. He was like, there's a bunch of other coaches who are great at Extreme Couture that he can use. So I think essentially stay at the same gym, but it sounds like him and Nick Six won't be working together anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that. It seems like there's a lot of creative difference. I think Nixick is a fantastic coach. He has a lot of great guys, and he does, like, he kind of is that gym's, like almost Mike Brown, where he does work with a lot of those really high level guys that, trust in him and want to follow his plan to become world champions. And so it's probably difficult for him to wrap his head around a guy like Strickland, who is very, very set in his ways. And I think that's one of his biggest problems. Like you said, he likes to train how he likes to train, and he doesn't want to make those changes. And it does show in his fights. I agree. He's very paced.
Yes. No, I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's an issue that you see a lot in, I guess, MMA in general. Just like, I don't know, people so many times I feel like think about, let's make it a hard day or hard work instead of like, let's make it a smart day. Let's work smart about this, exactly how it should be.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that tends to be when you're early in your career, though. Like fighters tend to grow up that way. You start out and it's okay when you're young, you're durable, you don't get hurt a lot, and you're also not training with or fighting super high level people. You can it's just train harder, all you need is reps. But I think there's this adjustment period that has to happen throughout your career, and you see it with these veterans who have been around for ages. There are guys who don't even spar anymore because they know that their body can't take that much damage anymore, and they still do really well. So it's like if you're stuck in that mindset, it's very old school,
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly that. It is just old school of like, if we work harder, we're gonna be better. It's like, well, that's not always the case.
Yeah, you have to have some intentionality to your training. Were there any fights that stuck out to you? We had a women's strawweight fight. Were there any fights that stuck out to you on the prelims?
I Angela Hill did look good for like she looked better. Like her last fight, I don't think was her most impressive. So I feel like she did look better this fight. But I'm just like, how do you keep on going to split decision? Like every single fight. I'm like, they said this was her first split decision that went her way out of her last 6. And I'm like, how do you have 6 split decisions? How do you keep on letting, like, her first round looked great, and then she lets these girls back in the fight every time. Always makes it a close fight.
And yeah, and I don't know if it's a style issue. Like her style just isn't conducive. And I know it's difficult to do damage at 115, but I think that's why grappling is so important for us small girls. Like that puts you in a position to actually be able to do damage, because very few girls are going to be knocking each other out on the feet or even dropping each other at 115 pounds. Like if you can put yourself on top of another girl consistently, you get to elbow ladies' faces in the way Gillian does. So it's I think, I don't know if it's her fight, like just fight IQ or style as a whole, but yeah, it's so, she's the most consistent split decision fighter I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm. Someone else who he impressed me with, he actually lost the fight, which I didn't think he did, but Vince Morales. I just like the way he was attacking some submissions. I really appreciated his grappling style. I feel like he was in submission position, like holding on to like a Dars or trying to attack something for the whole second and third round pretty much. So I didn't think he lost that fight. I think the first round went to Smith, but I'm like, maybe it's just me. I'm like, he kind of went for the choke that I like to at the very end, where it's like no hooks, going for the rear naked. I think his head positioning was a little bit off, and that's why he couldn't finish it. But it was, I'm like, I just appreciate that. I appreciate people who are just like looking for the finish in grappling situations and making things happen.
Yeah, and I think when fighters they transition from that, what you're talking about, where it's like, I'm constantly throwing up submissions constantly, to, okay, now I'm utilizing ground and pound and damage to work towards those submissions. I think that's the piece that a lot of these fighters are missing.
Mm-hmm.
It's either one or the other. We do damage or we're going for submissions. When you can combine the two and work into good positions, I think that opens up a lot for these fighters. But I think I sided with Smith here, but it was a close fight. So I wouldn't have been upset either way.
I think if you're stuck in a submission for like, because it's like the whole set, I feel like the judges are very biased in my opinion of like jiu-jitsu. I'm like, if like the kid was defending for majority of the second and third round, I'm like, I don't know. I sided with Morales on that one, but it was definitely a close fight.
Do you feel like they were the subs were super close in your opinion?
Oh yeah, especially in the second round, he had I believe it's either an anaconda or a Dars, but he was working it and kept on getting deeper. He attempted it 3 or 4 times, getting deeper, where it was like they were nice attempts, they were solid attempts. It wasn't like he was just it wasn't like, oh, he might have just like grabbed a guillotine and then lost it or whatever. It was solid attempts.
Yeah. I understand that the defensive side of it. I also see it from like a judging side. Like if let's say you drop somebody and you almost get them out of there, and you just like what Cannonier did to Rodrigues at the very end of the round, like very super close round, clearly won him the round, right? Because he was so close to finishing the fight. I wonder if judges have a hard time seeing a submission attempt that doesn't, like you don't see somebody really struggling or anything like that, they may be like, okay, well, they weren't that close to finishing the fight. So I see both sides of it. But yeah, I mean, if you're defending a lot, I see that as well.
I feel like you see it a lot in judging. Like, say even if someone's on bottom guard the whole time, but they're throwing up submissions and the person's just defending the whole time, they're still probably losing the round. But it's like they're probably working more the whole time. They're trying to finish more. They're trying to attack more. So it's like, I don't know. I think there always has been just, I think it comes from a lack of knowledge probably from the judges that they don't understand a lot of jujitsu as much as like fighters.
No, I agree. It definitely is different if you've never been in that position, you've never felt it.
Yeah.
You don't understand it until you've, especially like my thing is like people who don't appreciate writing, like wrestling writing, like like Danny Sabatello style writing and Bellator. Like if people who don't understand what that feels like to have somebody ride you like that over 15 minutes and how dominating it feels, they'll look at that and be like, oh, he's just hugging him for 15 minutes. It's like, you have no clue how exhausting, how much that weighs on you to have another man put you in positions you don't want to be in, or another woman, like it's a very dominating feeling,
No, I agree with that. I just think my opinion, I'm like, I feel like you should always be looking for a finish. We should always be either trying to submit or like do damage with the ground and pound, like strikes, whatever. I'm like, and for wrestlers typically like that, or like that are like where you get the opinion of like, oh, they're just hugging. I'm like, it's because of that. It's because they're not doing damage the whole time. So I'm like, I'm okay with people who are good wrestlers like that, but I think you need to be looking to damage, looking to finish the fight as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's what a lot of really high level wrestlers do miss in this game, which obviously Gillian does not. And Jake Nichols said, TalkSport asked Dakota to create her perfect fighter, and she picked Gillian for jiu-jitsu and ground and pound. Let's go.
Appreciate that compliment from her. Like, I think she's a complete badass.
Dude, she's such a beast. Such a beast. Good morning to Christopher J. Thanks. I'm a little blondie now. It's so blonde. It's throwing me off. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, who's that?
This is my natural hair color now.
This is just who I am.
Yeah.
How often do you have to redo your red?
So I like, this is always the question. I usually only get like my hair done whenever I need to get my roots done. So whenever I need to get my roots bleached, I'll get it done. But I have a shampoo and conditioner that's like bright red. So whenever it starts fading, I'll just use that and then it brightens it back up. So I usually only get it done like I'd say like 3 or 4 months, and then I just maintain it with the conditioner.
Honestly impressed that you don't have to go more often, because it does it stays on point. Jillian doesn't ever let the hair slack. It's always very, very bright red.
I'm saying it's natural.
Her mom ate lots of strawberries.
Yes. Going back to the card, another fight that I'm like, I think a perfect heavyweight performance was from Walter Walker. I'm gonna mess up his name. Like Walter Walker. But I'm like, went out there, shot a clean double leg, went for the heel hook, finished it, was in and out, quick, no damage. I'm like, perfect performance for a heavyweight, his second heel hook in a row. I think it's so valuable for someone at that weight to have a game like that, because there really is such a deficit in jiu-jitsu at that weight class.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. If you can wrestle, and I really want to see, we felt like we were getting an era of athletic heavyweights, and I think it just didn't last very long because Tom Aspinall beat everybody. And it's like, oh, like, well, now it's over again, So I'm hopeful to see some of these young prospects. We had I'm gonna butcher his name. Last week, the super tall guy. Like, oh my goodness. Was it last week or the week before? Bear with me.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name at all.
I don't remember his name. It's gonna drive me crazy. It's like Talon or Tap.
Oh, Teixeira.
Yeah, Teixeira. What is his first name? It doesn't matter. Teixeira, like super athletic, like moves really, really well. Taliesin Teixeira. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some of these young prospects, make it up the rankings, because sometimes we see a guy like that, like Despain came onto the scene and we were like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna be great. And then the first guy that realized he could take him down, it was just over, and he's doing amazing things, obviously now at Karate Combat, which is definitely his thing. But I'd like to see guys like that, be successful in the UFC, because I think that makes heavyweight more interesting. There have only been 5 heel hooks in UFC heavyweight history. Walker owns 2 of them. Yeah, that's quite a stat right there. 5. I'm surprised there's that many, to be honest. My question is, does Dontel Mays get to keep his job? We've seen the UFC making a lot of cuts lately, like even cutting guys like Biggie Boy, Rosenstruck, who has been on a losing streak, but was still ranked fairly high. Dontel Mays has not been so lucky. Like, do we see him still with the UFC on Monday?
The only reason I would say yes is because of the weight class that he's in. Like, the UFC actually released John Moraga, I believe he's a reporter with MMA Junkie. I can't probably messing up his last name, but he released on Twitter like the numbers of fighters per weight class. And in the heavyweight class, there's currently only 30 fighters. And in the lightweight class, there's 102.
Wow. That's insane. No wonder none of the lightweights can get enough fights. There's so many guys. And it's only going to get worse when Contender Series comes around this fall. But that's absolutely Chris, like, did you know? Jillian does. Now we all know. Only 30. But that's why I'm so surprised they cut Rosenstruck.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Like, it's so odd.
It's like you need these boys right now.
Yeah. I feel the same way when I see like young females get cut, like oh gosh, what's her name?
Corey McKenna.
Thank you, Corey McKenna. I was really surprised to see them release her as well. I do think she's a little undersized for the division, and she hopefully be able to show what she can do at 105 in the GFL tournament. But if that happens, we'll see. But we got to touch on that as well. Like, Gillian and I were talking about it. She sent me several of the released fights, and out of the ones she sent me, I think you said only one fighter was under the age of 40.
Yeah. It's either Diego or Douglas Lima. I can't remember which one. One of the Limas is fighting Uriah Hall, and he is the only, I believe he was 37. He's the only one who was under 40. Fabricio Verdum being the oldest at 47. Most of them averaged around 40 years old. But I'm like, it's just, dude, I don't know what you're doing, GFL.
So, do you know what the average age of their roster is?
No, I don't.
It's 36 and a half. And that's including fighters like Evelyn, who's only 22. So, like, that brings that average down
a lot.
Quite a bit. So without her, it'd probably be closer to 40. 36 and a half. Yeah, Angela Hill is also 40 years old. I do think that women tend to be able to fight longer than men, especially at smaller weight classes. Actually, especially at bigger weight classes, because I think when you lose your speed is when you tend to suffer. And you just don't see, like, the girls are faster at 115 than they are at 135. But I do think we don't take as much damage as these lightweight boys, like, I think we can definitely have more longevity in the sport.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just not as much, like you said, not as much damage, not as much damage to our brains, our bodies. Like, I feel like more durable in the sense because we're not physically capable. Like, heavyweight guys, they just throw their hand and they're knocking each other out. It's like, it's not good.
Yeah, your brain can take a beating. Honestly, though, at least at heavyweight, I feel like it's either you don't take a lot of damage over the fight, or you get hit one time and you're out. Like, you just don't see a lot of, like, Slava Claus, Sajikov style wars where these guys or Oralbai's fight with Rumbetsky last year. Like, the damage those guys are taking, almost finishing each other 5-6 times over 15 minutes might be worse than just, oh, I got knocked out,
Mm.
I don't know if that's a real statistic that I should be saying because I have no clue, but I feel like that's worse. Like same with boxing. At least in MMA, if you get knocked out, the fight's over. In boxing, it's like, oh, I got knocked out. I have a concussion. Now have 10 seconds to stand up and get another concussion on top of my concussion.
Yeah, they're like, get back up now.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, going back to the GFL, I'm like, I don't know if this is just a theory that I'm coming up with my own brain, but I'm like, I feel like they're offering retirement to these fighters. So I'm like, half these guys, it's like you fight one time, you get that retirement. Like I'm like, I'm assuming that's all most of them need. Like it's just that's what they're looking for to get out of this. Cause I don't see Frank Mir fighting more than once. Or maybe I honestly don't see Frank Mir fighting, but at that case, I'm like I don't know, these guys, it's like I don't know what's going on with the GFL. I don't know what's going on.
I'm with you. I don't know how they're gonna sustain the salaries that they're offering with the retirement that is likely going to come very quickly for about half their roster. So it's obviously, and we have a question from Christopher J said, are you excited to see your girl Hannah fight? But yes, as somebody who has a close friend in the GFL, like what are her thoughts on this? That has she spoken on what she thinks and what she thinks will happen long term with this?
I guess that she doesn't know necessarily like I guess a lot of them don't even with the fights announced, they have no date or no location. They've just announced fights.
Well, I've heard there may be issues with the state commissions as well because their weight classes are totally different.
Yeah, so I'm like, I think she's in the same boat that everybody else is and just kind of a little bit confused, but obviously it's a good opportunity if things go through, so she's willing to be a part of it. But I think a lot of people are just like, what's going on, essentially. Even like I saw they announced they released they traded Luke Rockhold from Team Dubai to Team Los Angeles for Grant Neal. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
they want it to be like the NFL so bad, but like, guys, we're not the NFL. Like, and we won't ever be. It's an individual sport. Like, and I don't, the teams confuses me the most because yes, there are a lot of ATT fighters on Conan and Pitbull's team, but then there are also a lot of fighters that aren't at ATT and don't train at ATT and have their own gyms and their own coaching staff. So what is the role of the coach, I guess, is my question. Like, are they going to make you replace one of your corners with Pitt or with Conan? Are they going to have any connection with those fighters? And honestly, we need to have Pitt come on and talk to us about it. Hopefully he's got some, he can enlighten us a little bit, but I think you're right. I think nobody's risking anything. It's for the fighters. It's all reward, zero risk, because if it falls through, most of the fighters will go back to whatever they were doing. Like there may be a handful of people decided to leave the UFC to do this, which I don't think was the right call personally for the couple of people that weren't cut, but made their decision, but I don't think a lot of people are losing if this, if it falls through and you're right back to where you were. So
yeah, exactly.
As well. But it's yes, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I'm like you were saying with the teams and like I just said, Luke Rockhold was traded from Team Dubai to Team LA. Like, one, why is he on Team Dubai? What does that even mean? Like,
he lives in California.
Yeah, I'm like, and obviously now he's to Team LA, so I guess that's more convenient for him now. He doesn't have to go to Dubai. Like, what does it even mean that they're on teams or these are the coaches? And like, I believe Dave said he had Ray Longo on the on Fight Bananas as well, and he was kind of in the same boat of like, don't know what's going on, but they're paying me.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, why not risk it? Like the money they're offering is wild, but I just don't understand the process, which I'm going to give them a little bit of grace because it's brand spanking new, but it just, yeah, I understand the concept. Like they're trying to make it the NFL, but the NFL makes you move to your city. They make you work with those coaches, which is why they can pay that money, because you are sacrificing so much. Some of these, I was watching, I don't know anything about basketball, but I saw some guy literally found out he got traded from the internet. Like, and now he has to pick up his whole life and move it across the country. We don't have to do that as MMA fighters unless they're going to start making these guys do that. And then they're going to start making gyms like ATT accommodate like 15, 40-year-olds, like to come in and train and take resources away from UFC fighters. Like, I just don't know what the plan is. I agree with Christopher. I just don't get it. Anyway, before we wrap everything up, we have to touch on next week's card because I'm so excited. We've got just fights after fights after fights for weeks and weeks on end. We didn't even talk about Tough. We'll talk about Tough on Tuesday. Tough released their roster. Go check it out. Incredible records on The Ultimate Fighter. We've got Chael Sonnen and DC as the coaches, which is going to be so much freaking fun. I think that's a great idea, but we'll chat about it Tuesday on the live show. This card next week, Gillian. Holy crap. Like, we've had weeks of bangers, but Ricky Simone versus Javid Basharat. Basharat is one of the most amazing people to watch train. Like, I literally will just sit and watch his rounds. His striking is unbelievable. Like, unbelievable range control, super well-rounded, so incredibly excited to watch him fight a guy as exciting as Simone. You have, Ibo Aslan, who's a newcomer fighting Jan Kutelaba, who's always exciting. Andre Fili and Melky Costa, super great fight. So that's just on the prelims. The main card, unfortunately, we lost Rob Font versus Dominic Cruz and Edson versus Steve Garcia. We actually lost quite a bit on that card. We also lost Rizvan fighting Curtis Blades. So now we've got Jean Silva fighting Melsik Bagdasarian. Absolute banger. We have Fluffy Hernandez fighting Brendan Allen. Incredible fight. And the main event is Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong. Like, the MMA gods are delivering.
No, it's that Brendan Allen and Anthony Hernandez fight that really makes me excited. I'm like, Anthony's last fight, just the way he came, I'm like, push the pace, looking for a finish constantly. I'm like, it was a super impressive style, and I really think we're going to see great things out of him. So I'm excited for that fight.
Oh, I'm with you. I love Fluffy Hernandez. Huge fan of Brendan Allen as well, but just the grappling exchanges and the pace that Fluffy brings is so fun. So fun. And I'm excited to see him, tested against a guy as big as Brendan Allen and a guy who can wrestle as well as Brendan Allen.
Yeah, and I think Brendan, like, the difference for me is I'm like, I see Fluffy with more finishing ability than Brendan. I think he does look for the finish a little bit more, where Brendan is a little bit more content to, I guess, play jujitsu a little bit more. He is looking for submissions, but doesn't necessarily open up for as much ground and pound opportunities, look to do damage as much. I feel like that's more where Anthony's going to be able to shine.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. So, I mean, give us real quick. Let's hear your predictions. Do you have a prediction on the feature fight as well? Jean Silva versus Bagdasarian.
I'm a huge Jean Silva fan. I'm like, I love the fighting nerds.
So Jean Silva takes it. I'm assuming you have Fluffy in the co-main event.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. I think this is a really interesting fight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is a very interesting fight. That one's probably the one I'm a little bit more torn on which way it goes. I think I would still lean Cejudo, but I think I'm a little bit more torn on that one.
I love Song, and I am so incredibly impressed with the resume he has built with as young as he is. He's incredible, and he's super dangerous, and he absolutely can do enough damage. But I'm kind of with you. I think Cejudo's wrestling. We've seen Song get out wrestled in the past, and I feel like Cejudo's just the level of his wrestling is something that's incredibly difficult to train for if you haven't been doing it your entire life. So
yeah, definitely. The only thing that makes me, like, I guess, iffy on Cejudo is his activity. We just don't see him much.
I know. And he's one of those guys that, like, I hate to say this because I understand, like, when you've been competing your whole life, you have to keep competing. So I get it. But part of me kind of wishes he just stayed and retired and never, just gone out as this legend, and we never had to see him, like, lose again,
I think part of me is at that point too. I'm like, I feel like I'm just not as excited to see him fight at this point. I'm like, just kind of wanted him to retire as what he was. So it's like, I don't know. I guess I kind of feel similar to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are the kind of guys I want, like, to coach Ultimate Fighter, by the way. I think that would be super fun to have a Cejudo coach. We did touch on Jared Cannonier at the beginning, but like, what a fight, what a comeback. 40 years old, still finishing guys. Dude has knockouts in 3 weight classes. Like, what more can you say about Jared Cannonier? Like, dude's a savage. And RoboCop's so freaking big. If you watch that fight and you told me that Cannonier is the guy who used to fight at heavyweight, I wouldn't believe you. Like, without knowing that, because how massive is RoboCop?
Oh, just absolutely. Absolute unit of a human being.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Oh my goodness. We've off topic. Michael Bisping saying last week that Daniel Cormier couldn't take him down. I mean, he can say what he wants, but I wouldn't believe it till I saw it.
I love how Cormier is just always trying to wrestle everybody. Anytime he's like just hanging out with like Islam or like whatever, they'll just be like having a conversation. He just starts wrestling them. It's like he has to test somebody's strength. They can't just talk.
No, never at all. I feel like that's just true for all grapplers. Like, that's how you greet each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a nice quick single leg, let's hand fight a little bit while we chat.
Test your defense.
Wow. Anywho, guys, we have been on here for 36 minutes live. We're going to get out of here. Make sure you tune in for the show on Tuesday. We will be back. It won't just be me. G will be back. Dave will be back. It'll be way more fun this time around. So we'll have to talk about Tough because we didn't get to it today. So we'll chat about Tough. We'll talk about this upcoming card some more. But thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.
It's the Morning Brew with Elle Dawson and Gillian Robertson. Brought to you by Fight Bananas.